Hello, my name is Subas. This is the last lesson as far as the chess piece moves are concerned, because today on this lesson we're going to be talking about the king's move. And the king is really the most important piece on the board. And why is it that? Because if the king is captured, taken, or cut, whatever you want to call it, okay, then the game is lost for that particular side of the board where the king was actually captured. For instance, if this white king was captured, or cut or taken, then the white piece loses. Okay. Similarly, if this king was taken, captured, then that black loses. Okay, so that's why the king is such an important, most important piece in the game. Having said that, the king doesn't have the kind of movement, strength and movements like the other pieces, like the rooks and the knights and the bishops. So the king is quite vulnerable because it is, as I said, it's the most important piece, but nevertheless is also the weakest piece really in terms of what it can actually do. So if I let's bring out the black king now. Let's say somehow it ends up somewhere on the board, and what are the moves it can make? The king cannot fly like the bishop or the rook or the queen. Okay, but it can move only one square at a time, but in any direction like the queen. The queen can fly in any direction, but the king can also move in any direction, but only one square at a time. So what I mean by that is, so it's the king's turn to move, so it will actually move one square there. Okay, or it can move one square there, or it can move diagonally one square there, or it can move diagonally one square there, or it can move one diagonally straight across one square, diagonally there and there. Okay, and if it wants to move diagonally on the white square, obviously it has to first make this move, then the opponent makes the move, and then if it's a black's turn again, then it can move one square there, or there, or there, or there, or diagonally over there, over there, over there, over there. It cannot fly like the queen. It can't go more than one square. It can't jump or fly like the queen, can't jump like the knight. So it can only walk just one square at a time. Okay, so if the king wants to get to that, let's say the king wants to get to that square. Okay, so or let's actually kind of play a little game. Okay, so as I said, the king can only move one square at a time. Let's say I want to bring this king somehow into that square over there. Let's say, okay. So first I have to move this pawn because the king can't move through its own pieces. Okay, just like the queen can't do that, just like the bishop can't do that, just like the rook can't do that. So you got to move the pawn out of the way before the king can actually move. Okay, let's say I want to bring this king eventually over there. So now it's black's turn to move, and let's say he decides to move this pawn over there. Now you can bring the king out because there's a spare. This square is empty, so you can move over there. Okay, and now let's say the knight decides to move there. 1, 2, 3. Goes there. It can't go over there because it got its own piece there, so it can go there. Okay, now I can move the king this way or this way. So I decide to go diagonally this time. Okay, and now I can actually, what I can do is I can decide to move, let's say move this pawn to 2 squares, 1 square, 2 squares. Okay, now I can move the king this way, okay, or this way, but there's a reason why you can't move the king this way this time, because there is a problem here, because if you look at that black's bishop there, which moves diagonally on its own colored square, is directly attacking the king. Okay, so the king can't move into a position where it's directly being threatened by a piece. Okay, so I can only go over there. Okay, and then let's say I bring the other knight over. So 1, 2, 3 over there, and now I can move the king over to that particular square. Okay, so you can see how many turns it takes for the white and black pieces to move before the king goes from there to over there by just only walking 1 square at a time. Okay, so that's important thing to remember. So, but as you can see that it can actually go diagonally, it can go straight. It can let's say if you decide to move this pawn over there. Okay, by moving this pawn, now you're actually allowing this queen to move diagonally, fly diagonally across there, threatening this king. So this king got to get out of the way. Okay, so it's by moving this pawn, it says, now I'm going to threaten you because you are in my path and I can take you. So the king got to now escape. He can now decide to move there. Okay, now why does it able to move there before it couldn't? Because it was worried about the bishop's attack, because now this pawn is in the way. Remember, the bishop can only go as far as there's an empty square there. It can't go beyond that to go and reach that king there, okay, because his own pawn is blocking his path. So that's not covered. So now the king can either go there or there. So let's say I go there. It's safe for me to go there, okay. And now then the black decides to move the pawn further, okay. Now the bishop is threatening the king, okay. And when it threatens the king, then the king is in check. Okay, I'll explain that in a few moments. Okay, now the king got to escape because it's in check, so it can go there. Okay, and now it can bring whatever piece. So the king can kind of walk backwards 1 square at a time to reach its original position if it wants to. Okay, or stay out there if it wants to. Okay, and that's how the game is played. But it's important to remember, because as I said, the king is the most important piece. It's you don't want the king, bring out the king too early in the game, because if you bring the king out too early in the game, the opponent can actually capture the king, and the opponent can actually win the game. So I only brought the king out just to show you how far the king can move and where he can actually move. Okay, and so that's the reason why. So if I actually bring the king back to the original position, put the pieces back, okay, so put all the black pieces back, okay. So we've seen how the king can actually move 1 square at a time. It can move diagonally, it can move forward, backwards, sideways. Okay, diagonally can only move whichever square it is initially faced. If you want to move to a diagonally on a different colored square, you've got to move sideways, forwards into that particular colored square, and then move diagonally on that particular colored square. Okay, so that's how it actually is. So it works. It kind of moves like a queen, except that it can't actually fly like the queen. You can only kind of walk 1 square at a time, and it can move backwards or forward. Okay, right. So that's really it's the king's move.